Good afternoon and happy International Women's Day. I am Ivor Wharton and today we will be discussing what can be done to improve the lives of women locally. Every day around us we witness the challenges and achievements of women, whether it be in the home or in the workplace. But today is special. Today, March 8th, which is designated International Women's Day, is a day that we recognize and celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women globally. At the round table with me today are two women who are champions in their own rights. Karen Abrams, many of you will know her as the founder of STEM Guyana. She's also a wife, a mother, a businesswoman, and a rights activist. Joining us via Zoom is Ms. Benita Montague, head of the United Bridge Builders Mission. She, like Karen, is a mother, a businesswoman, and also a rights activist. Together, we will be discussing International Women's Day, which is celebrated this year under the theme Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. Karen and Benita, as is always, thank you very much for responding to my call.
Thank you, Agba. It's good to be here.
Thank you ever so much and happy International Women's Day.
Now, my first question to you, ladies, is what does this year's International Women's Day theme mean to you?
Um, well, for me, it means that we should all be working for a better world for not just ourselves today, but for our daughters and for their children. And for me, I am actually looking for an affirming, meaningful change, not only in sort of the social sphere, but in business, in education, in the employment field, wherever women participate. I am looking for positive change, for empowerment, for equal rights, for justice.
Benita?
Thanks ever so much. Gender equality today for sustainable tomorrow and break the biases. Two themes used for this year. Now, I'll start with break the biases. And there's so much biases as it relates to women and work and pay. Many times we are getting less work, we're performing more work for less pay. Gender equality today for tomorrow's sustainability is ensuring that women are positioned today for growth of the world tomorrow. We know that we are the foundation. We know that we continue to be the mothers of those strong men out there. And if we can invest in our women today, there is no doubt what a greater world tomorrow will be.
Thank you very much. I know locally a lot of work has been done in relation to developing the lives of women, but some feel that enough has not been done when it comes to really developing them and empowering them. How do you think, or what else do you think needs to be done when it comes to legislation and so on to improve the lives of women and girls?
I think it has to begin with the fundamental understanding that women are half of the population of your country. And for you to attempt to develop your country, to develop your industry, to develop your business, to develop your educational environment, and not fully use those resources, essentially means you're underutilizing the resources you have that can contribute to development, whether it's development of the country or development of your business or development of policy and government. And so for me, I am less interested in asking for favors of let's be fair and just with women. And I'm more interested in saying, listen, it makes sense. It defies logic that you would underutilize these brilliant women who can make a significant contribution to the development of anything, any sphere they're in, but yet just because of our historical rules and the way society works, we feel as if we can't allow women to participate fully. And we're just not going to be able to compete with companies that do, with industries that do, with governments that do, with with businesses that do. They will have an advantage over us. So we have to convince the people who make these decisions that it is the right thing to do.
Vanessa?
I'll take it a little bit behind. I'll go back a step as to who writes our policies. Now, when we're looking at policies and advocating for women, we want our women to be a part of the policy making. Because if we have policies and we are not a part of making our policies, the framers of our policies does not represent, in most cases, does not represent our interests. So we must be at the table when the policies are written. And so if we can be at the table to have our policies written, our women, as fellow panelists said, can be adequately utilized, and the economy is a smarter thing to do. It is economics. And so we know that women historically, without an academic background, has been able to work the dollar better than any other gender can match. And so it is imperative that the world sees us for what we can deliver and not for a gender.
Now, in Guyana, we have, in Guyana, the number of women in our parliament is celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
But yet still we have all of these challenges facing women, from equal pay to access to potable water. What would your words be to our female parliamentarians when it comes to looking out for the best interest of Guyanese women and girls?
Yeah, so I worry about that the notion that women parliamentarians are the ones who should somehow be overly responsible for looking out for the best interest. I believe that in the first place, we need to do away with this whole idea of 33%. Women are 50% of the country. We need to allow the natural evolution of talent to come up to the fore so we can have balanced representation in parliament. All of those representatives in parliament need to be concerned with the lives of all Guyanese people. And fundamentally, I go back to my point. If they believe that they're leaving assets on the table, they're leaving resources on the table when they focus on one gender, if they truly believe that, and if they want to win, if they want to be competitive, if they want to write good policy, if they want to see efficient improvements in roads, water, lights, schools, hospitals, education, if they really want to see efficient development in those areas, then you have to, whether it benefits women or men, then you have to be able to bring the talent to the fore, and you can't filter that talent by gender. You have to allow talented people to get to the fore, to be involved with policy, and specifically for women, the women parliamentarians. I believe that they are more sensitive to issues of women. I want to make sure, I want to clearly say that. I believe because they live it. But I don't want to absolve the male parliamentarians from their responsibility because they overrepresent in parliament. They are the 60-something% in parliament. So they too must be sensitive to the issues around gender, around ethnicity, around just about around any bias. Because once there's bias in the process, what you're essentially doing is filtering talent. It's getting rid of talent because of your personal feeling. So when you get rid of that talent, that's talent that can't contribute to your goals and objectives. It's not smart.
Vanessa?
I am happy to know that we do have strong female parliamentarians in parliament representing us, but I'm not convinced that all of them are operating without biases that hinders their very existence and reason for being in parliament. Recently, we've had the incident of the attack on the female parliamentarian with the dildo conversation. And that is one way of shutting us up by insulting us or trying to intimidate us. I don't care which side of the aisle you represent, there must be some level of decency among the parliamentarians. And so when we see attacks like what we've seen there before, obviously parliamentarians, female parliamentarians from both sides can be intimidated to the point where they will not challenge morally wrong issues and issues that has severe negative consequences on women because of the fear of being attacked. And so I really do believe that our men has a role to play in being held accountable, as well as our women. In fact, I don't promote social promotion. I don't advocate just because they're women. I believe women must earn their right. They must earn their role. They must work for whatever they want. But I do think that our female parliamentarians has more work to do in representing not only women, setting the goals and setting the barriers, removing barriers, so that other women can actually be able to have feedback, so it's distracting, but so that other women can be encouraged and our girls can have great role models, but not flip-floppers or women that are intimidated to speak because of biases.
Ms. Benita, I'm glad you brought up that issue. And what I want to ask is whether, on the issue of domestic violence in Guyana, whether for both genders, male and female, that there is some amount of protection for abusers on either side based on who they are or the position they hold in society, that a man will not go against a female abuser because of who she is, and a woman will not talk against a male abuser because of who he is in society.
Well, there are cultural biases. Again, there are cultural biases, there are cultural handicaps. We have so many challenges to address that. And then there's the political fandangling. Now, it is clear that power plays a role and it undermines justice. And until the legislators can understand that they are harming generations of not only women, of men, of genders, of all ethnicity, then they will understand that they have got to take different approaches.
Karen?
Yeah, power always plays a major role in how these issues get resolved. I mean, it's not just it's in every phase of life, and with power comes privilege. And we hope that in democratic societies with strong institutions like justice institutions, the judicial system, that there's some balance there. But fundamentally, it doesn't matter where you go. Those in power are able to skirt the rules, skirt the laws, access privilege, benefit from privilege, and then those who are not so powerful, they tend to feel the wrath of the laws. We certainly would like to evolve to a space where our institutions, our democratic institutions, are strong enough. And I think I see some benefit here in Guyana, but our democratic institutions have to be strong enough to withstand the forces of power. We have to be able to hold people accountable when they mistreat others or when they do something that's not right. So it's a work in progress, definitely here in Guyana, but it's the whole power thing. It's very common wherever you go, and it's certainly the power of the press brings some balance to that, and the power of the judicial system, the strength of the judicial system, democratic institution, also brings some balance to that. So those are things that we definitely need to see strengthened in Guyana, so that we can hold these folks accountable when these issues occur.
For both of you, what would be some of the priority areas you would like to see addressed when it comes to the empowerment of women and girls?
Well, I my focus is on economics and business and education, and so fundamentally, I would like to see. Even from an economic point of view, I'd like to see a strengthening of the local content laws, for example. I'd like to see them reflect explicitly some benefit for women. I believe that that's critical. That women are 50% of the population. A woman running a business is not that unusual, and I think that if we say that we want to be able to provide benefit to local Guyanese, then women are also local Guyanese. And so women should explicitly benefit from the economics, the economics that surrounds the whole local content conversation. I believe in education. I mean, today we have a whole conversation around here in schools. I mean, that seems like a small issue, but it's not even about hair, as my friend Salima says. It's really about how we perceive our children, and about power and control, and really not evolving and understanding how these rules and the implementation of these rules hurt our children. So I would like to see some fundamental changes. And I think all of those changes go back to the thing I was talking about. I mean, if you are looking into the future as a leader and you're thinking, I want to efficiently develop this country, and by efficiently, I mean for as low a cost as possible, in as short a time as possible, for as many benefits as possible. And if you want to do that, then you most certainly have to make sure that all of your people who are capable are engaged. And so any policy, any environment, any organization that is overwhelmingly where you find women hidden just can't be efficient. I defy them to prove to me that they have the best of the table. I just don't think it's possible.
Bonita?
I would definitely want to continue calling for investment in our women, investment in our children. So our children are nurtured in a way that they understand gender balances, and the imbalance is removed or minimized from young ages. The empowerment of our women and the provision for our safety is critical, and our well-being. And those are issues that still seem to be challenged today. We cannot say we're investing in women when we remove resources away from civil society or civil society involvement, or control it to the point where they are non-existent. We have to understand that government, opposition, parliamentarians have their role to play. Civil society has their role to play. You do not have to play the role of civil society to be recognized, because civil society are grassroots operations that will always be closer to the population than the powers be. So it is important to invest at grassroots level, understand that investment in our women cannot be selective, and it must not only be classroom based, but it must be skill training as well. Um, Fellow panelists, Ms. Abrams will tell you and prove to you that innovative methods work every time, and you've seen the STEM program excel not only in Guyana but internationally, and hopefully it continues to do so. So we want women to be given the resources, girls to be given the resources, civil society to be given the resources, so we can continue to work. And our work cannot be raped. That is one of our challenges in Guyana, especially, and I'm sure other parts of the world, where our work is raped. You would research, you would come up with your programs, and then your programs are neatly taken away from you. And so that has to stop. It must stop, because you cannot be saying on one hand, I'm empowering women, I'm advocating for women, and then someone who produces her work works so hard to get to it, you steal the work, you steal the idea, you steal the content, and you rebrand it with your name. That is not empowerment.
Karen, you want to add something to that?
No, not really. It's what she's saying is very true. You have to, you can't develop a society by just stealing other people's ideas. Those ideas come from a place where the visionaries behind them understand the big picture. They understand where they want to go. They understand, and they have the energy and the impetus and the motivation to do everything possible to make that thing succeed. And so when you essentially copy an idea and move it over to some random group of technical people who can dot the I's and cross the T's, you don't fundamentally get the passion, the vision, the innovation downstream. Not just today. You see what you see today, but you don't know what's in store for the future. And it's just not the right thing to do, because what you do is you take the heart and soul away from people who are investing in these programs, which they really believe in. And so, and these are smart people. So when you take their ideas, you're essentially discouraging them. And again, you're taking resources off the table. And everything, you cannot, if you're developing a country and you have limited resources, you cannot take resources off the table. I mean, you certainly can, but you can't do it and then develop the country efficiently. And remember when I talk about developing efficiently in the shortest time as possible, for as limited in terms of financial resources as possible, with as much results as possible, those three things. And so you can essentially say, yeah, well, I'm going to just allow these 6 people to develop the country. And what happens is it takes a tremendously long time. It takes way more money than you can use. And then you don't have access to the innovation that helps you to exponentially move the thing forward quickly. So my word for today is going to be smart development. And it is just the smart thing to do.
Now, I know that apart from us talking about the International Women's Day itself, we're also here to talk about the work that these 2 women have been doing within their own organizations. Karen with STEM Guyana and Benita with the United Bridge Builders mission. Benita, if you can tell us what has been your work, or what work your organization is doing in that current level.
One moment, I'm in the office. 1 moment, sorry.
Benita?
Yeah, sorry for that. I'm in the office working. United Bridge Builders mission started some 29 years ago. As a result of HIV/AIDS epidemic. And over the years, we have been able to work throughout the length and breadth of Guyana, every Caribbean country. Um, and over the years, we have been able. I'm getting a feedback, so it's affecting me.
Sorry about that.
Okay, let's try again.
Yeah.
So United Bridge Builders Mission started some 29 years ago as a group working, advocating against discrimination and stigma with persons living with HIV, AIDS, and AIDS. Over the years, we have come to realize that several factors played a role. And so while we worked through the length and breadth of Guyana, we were able to target and focus on youths, women, and children, who remains the most vulnerable demographic of any society. And so in doing, we have been able to provide several services from the Meals on Wheels program, advocacy program, the youth diversion program, crisis intervention, where we provide support to persons who are abused or in vulnerable circumstances. We continue to work with that population. We work with women in conflict with the law and provide several other services, including safe spaces. Now, over recent time, we've been able to provide psychosocial support using our professionals, our psychologists, psychotherapists, social workers, and other interventionists in the team to provide those support, most times out of pocket. Some of our work in Guyana entails working with our Purple Angels, who are the orphans of domestic violence and suicide. As we know today, every time there is a murder, especially of a woman, though the woman would have children in most cases, in fact, in all the cases from 2016 to now, every one of the women had children. And so we will provide the crisis intervention support from the time of the incident thereafter. We work closely with Child Protection Agency as it relates to empowering and providing parenting support and counseling for women and children. And those are just some of the things we do.
Bonita, I know that the children of whose parents their mothers were murdered, or they would have died by suicide, they are sometimes seen as the forgotten victims. You would have mentioned just now that you're working with them. Could you tell us how difficult is it to actually reach these children in terms of getting them the help they need so that they can actually not forget what had happened, but to actually move on with their lives?
It's very difficult to say how hard it is, because many of those children remain traumatized, and most of them have witnessed the incident. So it is very difficult. We do not have and has never received a budget to work with that population, but as I said, we continue to work with them. However, through the Ministry of Human Services Child Protection Agency, we have been able to provide and recommend foster care services for the guardians, identifying foster care, ensuring that they get the foster care for whoever is their guardians. And that has helped. Our hamper remains, our monthly hamper program remains active. Um, we continue to provide counseling and support for the children, celebrating birthdays and big events that mommy and in most cases daddy or stepdad is not around, because in most cases the fathers are either incarcerated or has suicided, as we now say. And so it remains a huge burden on us to ensure that they are taken care of. Sorry. Prior to COVID, we partnered with the Guyana Police Force in the Pan for Pain program. That program is a program that allows children from the vulnerable demographics that we've been talking about to learn music. So it is therapeutic, but it's also, it positively engages them while giving them a skill. They have learned to express in art. So through our art program, they do painting, they tell their stories, and they can tell you how they're progressing as well. So we use that as a therapeutic tool. We continue to advocate for them because most of them are in courts. So we provide the court support for them. And of course, any other support that we could, including clothing and so on, that could not have been realized without the sterling support of Food for the Poor Guyana, who has continuously been a great support and our major supporter during our programs. Thank you.
In this program, Benita, would you be able to share with us the youngest, the smallest child and the oldest child that you're working with?
We've got our youngest that we received has been 9 months. Our oldest is eldest is in their 20s. But when we started, most of them were under the ages of 18 years. In fact, most of them were on the ages of 16 years. And so we got them from very, very young. Some of them called me mommy, so I'm a mommy to many of them, and an auntie and so many other things, but they call me mom and mommy.
Getting over the death of a parent is never easy for a child, but for those who are now late teenage, and those in their 20s, how are they coping?
Well, we've seen mental breakdowns at times that are still lingering. You know, mental health issue is not something that flicks on the switch and goes away and come back the next day and goes, or you're healed miraculously. It's a process. And there are things that creates their triggers, court dates, just a discussion, a next case in the press. So every day they have to live with that. And sometimes it's just going home and knowing mommy's not coming home today, or today is my birthday. I had one of the young ladies who was graduating, and she said to me, Mom, you know, I'm going to graduate, but if mommy was alive, she would have been there to provide all these things. She would have made a big fuss. She would have done my hair and my nails. And I said to her, I will ensure that those things be done. I know I can't fill that gap, but I will try to do my best. And we did with my team to make sure that those things are done. But it's hard. They're behind the scenes work. We cannot present them to the public. So it's very, very painful. Sometimes it really affects me because if they come and they say, you know, Mom, I don't have nothing to go to school. I don't have anything to eat. Or their caregivers would call and say, Mom, it's very hard. We got nothing for the children, no milk, and so on. And you, as a human being, goes into that phase of sadness with them because you understand, you empathize with them, you understand. And most of the scenes, I have been physically there thereafter, and so with the funerals and so it's not an overnight exercise where we just come, we give a read or whatever. And the difficult circumstances, department of the ministry do contribute to the funerals of some of their mothers, or have contributed to the funerals of some of their mothers. Over time, we would hope that we get more support in terms of financial assistance for them and the funeral costs, because sometimes the 30,000 or 45,000 or even a little bit more is not able to compensate for the expense of the funeral. And so what we hope to have happen is that the funeral costs be covered in full at some point. We're advocating for that. And I'm hoping, if the Honorable Minister listening, that is something we would like to see. We don't have to have hundreds of murders before we start doing that. But I think no family prepares for their loved one to be murdered. And if it happens, once the family is not in a position to handle the funeral expenses, I think we should get that assistance. So that is something we're asking for, and so we're hoping that we get a little increase. The budget looked good this time, so I'll see if we get some more money. Thank you.
Well, but I do hope that you get the support the financial support that you need to actually continue the work that you're doing. And I must say that we appreciate what you're doing, especially with the children whose whose parents have died, and they sometimes feel that their world would have ended. So it is grateful to hear that somebody's actually there looking out for their best interest. If we can turn our attention to Karen. Karen, I know recently STEM Ghana would have received financial support from IDB in the sum of US $950,000 to basically expand your STEM program. Could you explain to us what it is STEM Guyana has been doing and how this money will be utilized in furthering the work of STEM?
Okay, so the first thing to understand is that there are two major components to the work that we do. And so one of the components is targeted to vulnerable children and to children, and this is our Learning Pods program. The other component is open to children all across the country, and this is our STEM Club program. The STEM Club program, many of you are familiar with because we've been doing this since 2017. And this is the program where we meet every Saturday and we go through a science and technology curriculum, and we engage them in building robots and coding and things like that. Well, since COVID, we've shut down that aspect of the program, and we will reopen that when the Ministry of Education reopens schools. They haven't mandated anything to us, but we just try to follow them in that regard. The other component is the Learning Pod program, and that's targeted to young people because many of the vulnerable young children have been out to school for 2 years. They have not had consistent education, and there's been significant learning loss. Yeah. Now, this is something that the minister has spoken extensively about. This is something that UNESCO has spoken extensively about. And so 2 years ago, we decided, let's see what we can do with a virtual program. Let's see if we can build a model that will allow vulnerable children to group in locations all around the country in small groups. We'll follow the COVID protocols. We'll automate the entire process. We'll create engaging lesson plans that are integrated with technology, and we'll fund snacks for them. And let's see if we can get them to come into the program and improve their academic outcomes. So we essentially, that first program was 4 months. The first 2 sessions were 4 months each, and they were sponsored by Tullow Oil. And so they believed in us. They thought that it was a great model, and they wanted to see if it would work, to try to engage these children who had access to fundamentally no solid education, consistent education. And so we were able to prove our concept in session 1 and session 2, 2 4-month sessions, and then we engaged with the IDB, and they decided they liked the model. It's a terribly complicated system, which is sort of managed in its entirety by an application where there's a reward system for the kids online when they complete their lessons. They earn they earn points for attendance. They could use those points and buy stuff out of our virtual store. They get to play with their robots. They get to build and work together. The entire program is project oriented. So we tried to get the students to work together as often as possible. And what that does is we don't have a keen sense of where these kids will end up from a career point of view. But we understand that the skills we want to teach them, they'll be successful in any field that they go into. So essentially the money is to help us to move from 4 months, 4-month sessions to 10-month sessions, to move from meeting 1 day a week to 3 days a week, to move from 500 children to eventually more than 1,000 children in our program. And it is funded for 3 years. So we are very appreciative of the IDB, and there's also a component to the program where we have to still continue to bring in partnership funds. We need stuff like more snacks for the kids. We need computers, we need laptops. So these are things that we still have to fund and bring on board. But the IDB has essentially taken a lot of the stress out of the process. And more than anything else, what they've done is they've allowed us to work on building a model. And what I mean by a model is something that you can take from Guyana and you could put it in the Caribbean. You could take it from Guyana, you could put it in Latin America. You could put it in Africa, you could put it in India, you could put it in poor communities in the United States. So they essentially have funded the monitoring of the effectiveness of the program. They're funded studies. We have to prove from the assessments that our goals are achieved. Yeah. There's a lot of monitoring, there's a lot of measurement, there's a lot of analysis, and there are partnerships with universities. So this is not sort of, this is something where all of the parties, all of the stakeholders involved want to see it work, want to give us the funding to make it work, and they want to be able to use it in other places.
Now, if I can ask you, how do you feel about where STEM Guyana is today in comparison to where you started years ago?
People, I'm sorry about that. So many people will say that that we've come a long way. Many people say that we've come a long way, and we have. I mean, we essentially started off as summer camps, and we now are, pre-COVID, we were in 70 STEM clubs around the country. We're going to be in 40 learning pods. We have plans to roll out 400 STEM clubs. Like, this sounds like a big deal, right? So, but we're still dealing with a lot of challenges that we want to be able to overcome these. And I think some of those challenges will be overcome with education, and not just educating the children, but the parents, our policy makers, educating our private sector, the local private sector, the foreign private sector. I have to say, they really understand what we're doing. Yeah. It's an easier conversation with these companies in regards to soliciting funds for any of the components in our program. But we have to get to a place where people understand why we're doing this. We're investing in the future of Guyana. Mm-hmm. And when we talked earlier about underutilizing resources, underutilizing women. It's as terrible a problem if there's a huge class of people who are undereducated. They're Guyanese citizens. They're undereducated. They're underexposed to technology. They're underexposed to what it takes to be successful in any job. They're underprepared in terms of communication, communicating in English, written language, and oral communication, and self-confidence. They're prepared for problem solving, thinking things through, critical thinking. Like wherever you go, even if you work in retail, you will do much better in that retail environment if you can bring a mind that says, there's a problem here. Maybe we can solve it this way. Or, we keep running into this conflict, right? Peter, Paul, and James, why don't we just work together? Or I should say Mary, Jane, and Anne. Why don't we just work together to solve this? Like that sort of mentality will take you very far. It doesn't matter which environment you're in, whether you're in technology or retail. So we're essentially attempting to give these young people, the vulnerable young people in our Learning Pods program, a fighting chance. And some subsection of them will go into technology, and that's great. Others will go into other areas, and that's even better. All of them will go into those spaces with an improved mindset on how we can achieve our goals by working together, thinking critically, problem solving, conflict resolution. How do we work out conflicts? Collaboration. We struggle with conflict resolution in Guyana.
That's so true.
And it seems like a fundamental issue, but we just culturally cannot say, I'm sorry. How do we work together to fix this? I take responsibility for my part of it. Like those things are almost impossible to come out of our mouths culturally. And so these are things that we have to get our young people comfortable with. Take responsibility for your actions. Nobody's going to kill you. And then we need to stop trying to kill people when they take responsibility for their actions, right? So these are some of the things we're working on.
Well, Karen and Benita, I know that we have been here for a while. We have touched on a number of topics, and I'm very grateful for this time. And I hope that, the session has been very informative. And I hope that our listeners, had an opportunity to learn a lot. For those of you who may need support, if it's domestic violence situation, you can contact the United Bridge Builders mission. And for those of you who may need assistance in business, if you want your children to join a STEM program, you can contact Karen Abrams. So that is where we will end today's program, but we are going to continue. These are discussions that you will see from us from time to time. So thank you very much for joining us. And again, I wish you happy International Women's Day.